FM, Breaking Stereotypes with your host, Zainab Zaeem. It's been a while, and I would like to just say a quick thank you for all your patience while I took a little break before I came back. So today, being Monday, 4th September, we kick off with an amazing show. Well, at least I hope it to be amazing. I've named it Breaking Through Bricks and Mortar. And as we continue with the show, you'll understand shortly why this name has been chosen. So before I introduce my guest today, I would like to say that the studio line, should you wish to make any phone calls, ask any questions or comments, 0116 4822 086. Alternatively, you can send a WhatsApp or a text message to 077 488 55055. I ought to know those numbers by heart by now, but I don't, unfortunately. Or you could chat to us through Facebook on Ramadan Radio FM. Now, as always, my audience are fully aware that I do like to thank the team at Ramadan Radio for all the background work that they put in when making this show happen. I would also like to thank my guests. Without them, and without my listeners, my viewers, the audience, we will not be able to continue with the show the way I do. So, without further ado, I'd like to introduce my guest for today. It is Sabina Tayyub. Assalamu alaikum, Sabina, welcome.
Wa alaikum salam. Thank you.
So what I normally do is I do just a little introduction before we start going into the questions. So when I approached you for you to come onto the show, you gave me a really beautiful intro, but that intro speaks volumes, so I don't want to do you injustice by sitting here and reading it out. So what we are going to do is I'm going to just briefly give a tagline, and then we'll go straight into the show itself. So Sabina works as a quantity surveyor at one of the largest and number one construction companies in the UK, and most of you may have heard of it, known as Balfour Beatty. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Mm-hmm. She graduated in 2016 with a Master's of Engineering degrees in Civil Engineering at Coventry University. Well done. Congratulations on that. So I'm not going to go into the rest of it. So why don't you tell us exactly what it is that you've graduated from, but don't go into what it is that you do, because I do have some questions on that.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, sure. So I think it goes back to A-levels. I really enjoyed physics and maths for A-levels, and I was really confused to what to do. And I wanted to do something that I enjoy doing and not just what people tell me to do. So I went to open days at university, and I was like, okay, engineering goes well with maths and physics. I don't want to purely do maths or purely do physics. Just want to have a combination of it. And then I thought, okay, I want to do engineering. That is sorted because I enjoy those subjects. And then I was like, but what sort of engineering? Do I enjoy mechanical? Do I enjoy civil? Do I enjoy water engineering? You know, there's so many engineerings, electrical. So I had to go at all of them, actually. So I just went by myself on open days, and I, queried what is that, what is not. And then there was civil engineering, and believe it or not, I never knew what it was. I never knew that is like you're building. This is what you call to when people are actually building bridges, building roads, building like just normal buildings. Because I actually have a background in construction from my parents. They actually own a construction company in Malawi, and that's where I actually grew up. So I was like, okay, this is something I understand, because I grew up going on sites, looking at all these buildings being built and hospitals. So I went to another university and I inquired only about civil engineering. And then they pretty much sold it to me. And I was like, you know what, I think maybe this is what I want to do. Let's give it a shot for 1 year. If I like it, I'll carry on. If not, I'll just back out and choose something else. And when I went to university, my first year, I actually topped the whole year.
Wow. So
I absolutely loved everything about it. And I was like, you know what, I think I'm made for this.
So you smashed it.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to stop you there because I want to go into a few questions before we start going into a little bit more deeper. I'm really glad to hear that you said you've got a background in construction. I've not got a background in construction, but I am a builder's daughter. So I have been around the bricks and mortar. And when you said to me earlier that was creative, it's because I've been around literally bricks and mortar, concrete and all of that. But one of my brothers, he's also in construction. So I know a little bit about it. But it's interesting you say that a lot of people don't know what civil engineering is. I suppose I get where you are coming from I've taken advantage of the fact that I do know what it is, not just because of my parents' history, but because with the career that I have as a solicitor, and I do a lot of property disputes. So we actually have to instruct quite a few quantity surveyors or engineers to go out on sites and take measures and, you know, do expert reports and then attend hearings on behalf of our client and so on. So I kind of took advantage of that, but I'm quite glad you touched upon that. So we'll go into that a little bit. So you said earlier that you weren't too sure at the time of A-levels because of the subjects. Now, my daughter currently is 14 years old. She's the youngest of 4 children that I've got. Now, they had no issues. One of them was a given. He was going to be a doctor because his father imposed it upon him. One of those typical stereotypes that we have, doctor, engineer, lawyer, and all of that. The other one, the eldest, who's a Hibs, as a consequence, he ended up going into business degrees and that, but he's currently doing investment banking, so totally out of the norm for most of our Asian family. And one of my other sons, he's doing engineering, but he's doing aeronautical engineering. So I see your point about all the different types. But for my daughter, funnily enough, just before I came here, she's actually changed her decision again as to what she wants to be. She changes almost every 6 months to a year. And the most recent one that she had was she wanted to be a lawyer, and I didn't know how I felt about that, given that that's a career I'm in and I know what it's like, but every industry is hard. So as I was leaving, she goes to me, I think I want to be a fashion designer, or I might go into architecture. So she's going ifs and buts, but I never imposed it upon my kids, other than me telling her I had to have a private pilot license, which is a hobby rather than a career. What did you want to be actually when you were growing up? Were you like my daughter, 10 different things all in the space of 6 months? Or did you kind of have a feeling as to what it is that you wanted to be?
No. So you know what? You, as kids, I think I can probably talk for majority. You want to become something that you can relate to or you see on a daily basis. Like doctors, you see them when you get ill. You're like, superhero. You know, you see someone on a daily, like a teacher. You see they're the norm. Whereas construction, you don't know that's the norm because you don't do it every day. So going back to your question, when I was younger, I always wanted to be an air hostess. I felt like that was a privileged job. That was something that looked really fancy. You look pretty. And I wanted to become that until I was 17. That was my dream job.
I smile because that was one of the first roles I wanted to do. My father, unfortunately, put me off with some of the comments that he made about it. But yeah, I was so that's actually what you wanted to do all the way up until you were 17.
Yes.
So why did you not pursue that?
So I literally sat down with my dad and I was like, I want to do that. And he goes, okay, so you see, there is a little bit barrier coming from a Muslim background. And I was only 17, and if I had to pursue that, I was 18, and I had to live away at 18 to pursue something like this. And he goes, you're a girl alone. I won't be able to be there if you need anything. You're going away. It doesn't suit me. Even like the choice of my university, depending on that had to be at home, to travel every day, something that is close by. So coming from that, I had to make decisions different. But now when looking back, I don't regret that. I'm glad I didn't do that because it doesn't suit me. But at that point, because you're just young and you just want to do what you want to do. But I had that barrier.
Well, they say, don't they, that parents, they're wise when they tell us what we can and can't do, isn't it? Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't work out.
Yes.
I'm not going to go into all the ins and outs of, women living away and things like that, but you have touched upon something there when we talk about stereotypes and whether, women can go away and, things like that. But it does depend upon the upbringing that you have. And when we do, hindsight's a beautiful thing, isn't it? At the end of the day, if we all had foresight, then half the things we do, A, wouldn't be fun for us, and B, wouldn't be a learning curve for us, because we were walking in with our eyes wide open, knowing exactly what was going to happen. And that can be boring for a lot of people, and a lot of people can give up as well because it's not presenting any challenges. Okay, so by now, you're 17 years old, you've had that conversation with your parents or your father, you've sat down. This, I take it, was before you did your A-levels?
No, when I finished my first year.
So when you finished your first year. So you didn't then select your A-levels according to the actual degree you were going to do at university?
No.
So what made you choose those A-levels then, if you don't mind my asking?
Oh, no, it's just that school, when I was doing GCSEs, those were the subjects I enjoyed the most. So when I went to A-levels, I did biology, physics, maths, and business studies as my AS levels.
Wow, mashallah.
And then I saw, okay, business studies, yeah, I did get a good grade, but I don't enjoy it as much as I enjoy the other subjects. So I dropped that. I always wanted to do something I enjoy. That was my key. And my parents never forced it, like being the first generation to go into university as well. It was never like a thing that if you want to study, study. If you don't, then it's fine. So
I have noticed with parents that when you are the first generation going to university, they're more humble. They're more humble because we don't have big shoes to fill. And they're grateful that we're actually doing something maybe on our own 2 feet with or without their support. So, okay, so you're in A-levels, you've chosen this. Now, you've told us what made you get into this. When you actually went to university, did you have any challenges when selecting the subjects or selecting the degree that you wanted to go in, either from the university's perspective or the crowd that was there? Was it more male-dominated females? Were you the only female, Muslim female? Talk us through a little bit about that, the university experience.
Oh yeah, that was a challenge and a half, I'm not going to lie. Yeah, you had to be really strong-headed to survive the 4 years that I did. So when I was there were 140 guys and 10 females in our cohort.
140 to 10.
Yeah.
So
and out of
disparity.
and out of those 10, there were 3 Muslim girls. One was international, coming from Nigeria. One was from Birmingham, and there was me from Leicester. And us 3 were never friends.
Okay.
Even though we were only 10 girls, but I don't know, it's just somehow the way it worked out. And all the other girls, they were actually, half of them were international and half of them from UK.
Well, it's not expected that just because they're Muslims you have to be friends with them.
Yeah.
Some of my best friends are non-Muslims. It's just the way things work. There's no harm in that. I suppose there is that expectation from parents, isn't it? Get in with a good crowd and be good and all of those things. So 140 to 10, very interesting. I'm going to take a step back a little bit. You mentioned that you're from Malawi. I hope you don't mind, and please feel free to say no. My audience will not be offended and I will not be offended. But how old were you when you came to the UK? Because you said you were raised over there.
Yeah, I was 9.
9.
I was 9, yeah.
So adjusting from Malawi to the UK, how did you find that first? Because that would have affected your adjustment in university, hence why I'm making the link.
Yeah, to be honest, I didn't even know how to speak good English.
When you first came?
Yeah, because I came from a very small town called Zomba, and the education system was not that great, and you only have a primary school back then. There was no secondary school. So my parents made a decision to send all the kids here for education. And when I came here, I was struggling to even speak English, trying to make friends, and they'd be like, oh, you don't belong here, don't be here. So all that bullying aspect that came with it. So and I was like, I just want to study. I'm only here to study. I'm same as you. But yeah, that was a little culture shock as well, coming from there to here to fit in with people. Just the whole culture is all different.
So you faced not just a challenge in the career and the university itself, but also adjusting to life in the UK, which is a huge shame. Like, I know a lot of people from abroad, and most of them do. There is that language barrier. There's also that culture shock, but also society as well. And most of the things that stems from society, culture. It's not actually religious thing. And one of the main purposes of breaking stereotypes is to try and distinguish what is culture and society norm, and actually the fact that we need to break through it, and what is religion. So you've come over, you said that your family's got a background in construction. I take it then that your dad must be very low-key, or shall we say secretly pleased that you've gone into or followed his footsteps.
I will not say low-key, he's super proud.
Good.
Yeah, he tells everyone. Sabina's going to construction, she's an engineer now, a quantity surveyor. He tells everyone. He goes, I know exactly what she does. He knows, he's super proud because he understands the whole industry. Yeah, he understands, and he loves it. And he brags about it.
Absolutely. Must make for some wonderful, tea time conversation. Yeah, I can agree. I can relate to that.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go back to the challenges in university. You said the ratio was 140 to 10. I don't suppose you know, out of the cohort that you had, how many of the women have actually then gone into their career? Have they actually, I suppose they graduated, but did they then pursue the career that the degree allowed, was setting them up for? Would you know that information, or is that something that you don't have?
Yeah, everyone that graduated, they've gone to do really well.
Okay,
There was one that actually dropped out in second year, but she didn't pursue civil engineering because of her own personal reasons. But everyone else I know of.
So then, from the 3 Muslim women, you're the one that's working in Balfour Beatty.
Yes.
Are you the first Muslim civil engineer for that company itself, or on the site that you're in? I'm just trying to gauge an understanding of the equality and diversity and how it actually works.
So it's a huge company, so I don't have the statistics, but when I went, I found myself to be the only brown person, the only female, and the only youngest person as well.
Wow.
So my projects were small. I started off regionally, so building like probably projects are worth of 25 million. But now we're working on...
You call that small? Okay. Humble much. Yeah, bless you. Okay.
Yeah, so I had a small team, and again, another culture shock there, because I started living away from home. So that was a time where my dad's like, go, spread your wings, go, and the world is your oyster, go for it.
But you made it now, haven't you?
Yeah, I made it now. So yeah, alhamdulillah, I had good opportunities and good people. So in that big company, I felt like when I went there as a young person and a Muslim, I did stand out from the crowd quite a bit, but I also stood out quite a bit because I was a bit outspoken. I saw a lot of things that were not female friendly, Muslim friendly. A lot of comments that will come up. I'm like, that's a bit racist. So when I used to go in conferences and stuff, part of the graduate program, I'll raise my hand. I'm like, why is this taking place like that and like that? And then slowly, I got a bit recognized, and now I'm the face of the company.
Oh, wow.
So a lot of people know me. Yeah, you can just Google me, you'll find me there.
Mashallah, congratulations.
Yeah,
that's fantastic. Okay, so from the cohort, alhamdulillah, everyone's gone on. So it's not a degree that's wasted. So for the audience that's listening and wondering what kind of engineering degree to go in, then civil engineering is one of those that they ought to pursue, and there's opportunities for them. It's a bit different for us, you see, in our law degree. So when I was doing my legal practice course, I mean, I don't have the stats either, but from, I would say maybe, let's say about 50 of us, maybe 5 of us made it, you know, things like that. So it's quite a disparity in our stats when it comes to a law degree. Hopefully that's changing, because there's been a massive overhaul in the process that you could take to qualify as a solicitor. I was speaking to an architect yesterday. I'm going to do a shout out. He's called Umar, and I was talking to him yesterday, and he's currently doing an architectural course, and he was telling me how his university actually helps them with their training places and stuff like that. And I mentioned that to my daughter today, because she was telling me she wants to be an architect, and I said, you know what? These kind of subjects, I think you really need to do some research, because if the uni is helping you with placement, that is a massive weight lifted off shoulders. Whereas when we were doing our law degree, we didn't have that assistance. It wasn't like what it used to be in the olden days, where law firms used to come in and recruit from the court of, you know, the academically bright students. We didn't have anything like that, and we were kind of left to fend for ourselves, and some of us gave up. I actually did give up, but for my own personal reasons, but then I went back into it 5-6 years later, and I still struggled to get that job. So I'm curious, if you don't mind. I mean, you mentioned things like, you know, some comments were being made while she was still a graduate. And I mentor a lot of graduates, and a lot of graduates do come across a lot of issues. It's a given in any industry. It's not industry specific, is it? But how did that make you feel? I mean, confidence-wise, putting your hands up and actually bringing that to people's attention. You know, I'm assuming you would have been nervous. What made you overcome those nerves in order for you to get that question out there for that change to happen?
It took me 8 months to build that courage, because at the same time, I don't want to jeopardize the environment, the working environment I'm at, because that's where I'm looking at the problems. 8 months, I was living in hotels back then. It was part of the thing because of living away. I used to be in my hotel room and just cry. I'm like, why me? Why is this happening? My trousers don't fit me right. I'm really struggling to bend down, but I can't talk about it because I feel like there's no lady here. I can't talk to a man like that, you know? All of that questions I'll get again and again. And at one point I just went like, I either just say it, and, you know, I'll speak to my parents, and they give me a lot of support as well, my friends. And they were like, just speak up. You know, nothing's going to go wrong. You are there on your own merits. It's not like you're saying you're stupid or something. This is an actual problem you're facing, so just speak up. So after 8 months of building courage, I actually finally spoke up. But I didn't speak to my project team. I spoke to someone that I confided in when I went to a conference,
Okay.
and that was a very high up person.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Did you know that?
No.
Oh, it was one of those conversations.
Yeah.
Okay. How did that go?
Very supportive. They're like, oh, who's your line manager? I'm like, this and that. I never had a clue. They were just like, oh, how's things going, that and that. And I was just like, oh, not so great. I'm struggling with that and that. Oh, okay. Which project are you? Okay. Wrote my name down, contacted me the next day.
Wow.
Come and meet for a coffee.
That says a lot about the company, because that could have gone either way.
Yeah.
That could have gone either way. So, but that says a lot about the company. It means that they've taken your comments on board and they're actively doing something about it. I suppose it's one of those things, isn't it, that they're not really going to think about it unless they come across those issues. And sometimes one shoe fits all until that one foot comes over their way that says, well, actually, this doesn't fit me. Okay, so you said about comments. Are you able to go into it a little bit more? I mean, the reason why I say that is my brother's a male, right? Of course, he's my brother. That's a given, isn't it? But one of the first things he always used to get when he started off in construction was, where are you from? And I'm one of those where I get asked that question. I will say, oh, yeah, my family is from, India, and I'm from up north. But he turned around and he would say, Bolton. And I said, no, where are you from? I'd be like, Bolton. Where are you from? And they'd be like, are you asking where I'm from? Do you want to know my parents' history? And they were like, oh, yeah, your background. Well, Bolton. Because my dad, my parents have been here since the 60s. And one of those challenges he faced was the fact that we are Asian. And that was one of his biggest challenges. And then when he used to speak, of course, it's a man's world, construction, building. It's a huge man's world. So sometimes when he talks, it's not when I'm in the law profession, right? When we're having conversations with our clients, I have to make sure I'm not saying the word in it, because I'm always saying in it. I have to say, isn't it? Is that not correct? And I have to be very careful with my choice of words in that way. Whereas he gets to play the opposite role. There's a lot of, F's and blefs coming out. Yeah. How do you find fitting in with the male-dominated industry in that sense? Did you have to conform to their way of working, or were you able to pave your own?
So initially, as I said, it was a culture shock. I was just like, what am I doing here? At that point, I've never sworn in my life. I was all of that good girl, but like, why are you singing for no reason? Like, what's the point? Very calm and collected that way. When I went there and everyone's talking like that, I'm like, I can't change them. That's just them. So I'd rather just avoid it to engage in such conversation. I can talk properly. And they always found that very ladylike. They were like, oh, you're a lady. Then they start saying, oh, sorry, excuse my French. So they really did work around me. Every time they would say the F word or whatever, they were like, oh, sorry, excuse my French. I'm like, no, it's fine. You carry on. Yeah. So that way it was all right. But going back to what you said, you asked me the question that, can you, give us an example of what sort of comments you might have had. I've never had a question about my, ethnicity or anything like that. But I think more so of my credibility to be here. So one point, I'll give you an example. I had a 360 excavator driver that had come over, and he came through the back door, and I was in the engineer's office. I was an engineer back then. And he comes in and he goes, oh, can you please show me where to do the paperwork and all that? I'm like, oh, yeah. If you just go down, you'll find the paperwork. He goes, oh, yeah. And he points at me and goes, I know who you are. I'm like, oh, you know who I am? He goes, yeah, you're the receptionist, aren't you? And I went, oh, okay. He just automatically assumed I'm a woman here. I'm in the engineer's office with my PPE on, but I'm a receptionist. And then I said, oh, okay. I just went, you know what? Okay, I'm going to give it back to you. No worries, because he was going to be working for me. So I said, okay, go get your paperwork and stuff. And then after some time, when he had his induction and paperwork done, I called him and I said, I'll have to give you briefing for what you have to do work. You should have just seen his face, because I was putting him to work.
I love it.
And that was epic. I was like, I don't need to give you explanation. My actions will speak for it. And he just went like, you could have just told me you're not a receptionist. I'm the engineer who will be setting you to work. It was epic.
I love it. You know what? I do love, I shouldn't say this, but I do love situations like that, because it literally is breaking stereotypes.
Yeah.
And that reminds me of a story. So when I used to have a business, I had a textile industry, and there's lots of comments about textile industries in Leicester, and I'm not going to go into it, but ours was, alhamdulillah, you know, everything was on the up and up, especially with me behind the driving wheel. But as a business owner, being British, female, Muslim, we not only we have our own morals and standards and what Islam teaches us about integrity and honesty and all of that, and it all gels in. But at the same time, I'm one of those that I don't take no. You can complete the wordings, right? I don't take from, you know, people surrounding me. But I remember back in those days, there was a bit of naivety from me. I was quite young. I was working in a male-dominated and an Asian male-dominated industry back then. But I used to love doing paperwork. You know, and these textile industries started off having no paperwork whatsoever. And I remember once HMRC came to do a random VAT spot check. And the woman just walks in, opens the door, comes and sits down. And my husband at the time, he had his desk in one corner of the office and I had a desk in the other side of the office, right? And we used to sit on opposite ends of one another. And I was doing all my paperwork, whatever. She comes in, she sits down, no introductions. After about 10, 15 minutes, she looks at me and she goes, so when is this person Zainab going to come and see me? I've been waiting for him. So clearly she didn't know that Zainab was a female name. Fair enough. No one expected her to. So I turned around and I said, well, why didn't you say you were looking for Zainab? You just barged in and made yourself comfortable. I am Zainab and I've been sitting here with you for the last God knows how long. And she goes, you possibly cannot be the director of this company. And I said, why not? Oh, you look way too young. You look like a teenager. And because I, looked quite young. And I said, well, I kid you not. I've got children and I'm married. And yes, I am the director. And once she got over that, the nerves were there that, this is a person from HMRC and blah, blah, blah. And I just went through the years. So I showed her year one and I said, look, it's all over the place. I was still learning. We couldn't afford an external HR. We couldn't afford an external auditor. So I was learning. And there wasn't really Google in those days. It was still a new thing. You had to be super rich to have a computer and all of that. So I showed her all the manual processes. And then I showed her year 2, year 3 and all the improvements. She sat down and she goes, you don't even need to wait for my report. Here you go. I'm signing you off. Everything's on the up and up here because I had everything. 6-7 years worth of paperwork. But it was that initial, and as she was leaving, she did apologize. She goes, I really do apologize for having that stereotype. I was expecting a male, an Indian male, but a male nonetheless. So I really do like those situations. Yeah. And as a motorbiker, I get that a lot, When I take my helmet off, they expect, sometimes a male, I'm short and chubby, so they kind of expect my body ain't exactly shaped properly, so they expect that, or, they don't expect a Muslim, basically, so it's quite funny. So I'm glad that, I don't think he'll be doing that again, really. So now, working as a Muslim and an engineer, and you've talked about it being in a male-dominated environment, what about there being any sacrifices that have you had to make any sacrifices in order for your career to be advanced? Be it, I don't know, your environment or whether religion-wise or anything. Do you feel like you've had to make any?
Yeah, I think initially living away from home, it was really looked down upon. Not by my parents, but by cousins and
society.
Uncles. Yeah, they're like, you're a girl, you're 22, you're living out, you should be getting married now. Not focusing on career, kind of thing. And I was so career driven. I didn't want to get married then. I'm not one of, by due respect, I was not one of those that wanted to get married early. I just wanted to have a career, travel a bit and then settle down. And that was my own choice. My parents never forced me. So I think I was really looked down upon that. Like, why are you living away? Like, I traveled quite a bit. I went to 17 countries in 3 years.
Wow,
whilst holding a full-time job. Yeah. Wow, I'm finally earning my own money. And my dad, my parents were really cool with it. They're like, we trust you. You're not going to do anything wrong. It's that trust element.
Yeah,
and so I did it all within the means of Islam. Islam doesn't tell a woman cannot travel. You just got to be safe. And, I've always been in touch. I've always been with someone. I never went alone. So, that sort of aspect, I kept my parents happy. But at the same time, I kept myself happy. And now, I'm in a position where I'm working from home now, completely. Now I'm going to the office, actually. I've started a new project, I just remembered, it's been a long one, this one. But for 3 years I was working from home since COVID. And everything's just really worked out. Now I feel, okay, I think I'm more settled in my job. I'm in a position where I'm very comfortable. I've done what I had to do with, like, you know, chartership, et cetera, because that's very time consuming. And now I feel like, now I don't mind looking, you know, to settle down and all that. So, like, I have conversation with my parents, but, you know, people just look down on you that you're so old now. Like, why are you looking to get married now? You should have done it earlier, but why? Why can I not?
Yeah. Funnily, you say that. I had a conversation with my one of my cousins this afternoon, and we were talking about that because I'm quite independent and I am going through a second divorce. So to my audience who's listening out there, hence the reason why the Satar has been dropped from my surname. And, you know, I'm quite open about my background. A lot of people want to brush these kind of things under the carpet. I'm quite open because, like I said, Islam says that your right hand shouldn't tell your left hand what it's doing when it comes to charity and things like that. And some of the good things that you're going through, you ought to keep it to yourself because of nazar. You know, Islam recognizes nazar. It's a huge aspect in Islam, and, you know, the evil eye and, you know, things going bad for us. And, you know, some of our closest, nearest and dearest are actually the ones who are not going to be our well-wishers. But I was talking to my cousin this afternoon, and he's not in his, you know, early 20s. He's in his late 20s, but he's still young. And he's now in a place where he's ready to put down some roots. And I actually commented, I said, you know what, I'm really glad that you're now wishing to get married at this age as opposed to a few years earlier, because you want to be able to have done a few things once you were not in a committed relationship. You don't have a partner to take care of. You don't have children. And then we were just talking about myself, and I turned around and said, you know what? Unfortunately, I think this is it, because I'm quite independent. You know, alhamdulillah, when it comes to finances, when it comes to my own way of living, my kids are all grown up. And I said, whichever man comes in my life is going to have a really difficult time, because if he wants to provide for me, I'm not going to allow it. And my cousin was like, nah, you need to change your, you know, your mentality, you know, take semi-retirement, go travel the world. And I'm like, no. You know, I just want to carry on doing what I'm doing. You know, alhamdulillah, I'm in a good place and I'm really enjoying what I'm doing. But there are some people out there that would like an independent and strong and confident woman, but there are equally people out there who don't want someone like that, you know. And one of the things that I've found with society, and I mean absolutely no disrespect when I say this, but these are my own experiences. I talk from experience. I've seen so many families look for single girls who know how to cook, but also who know how to dress and have a first-class honours degree, a full-time job, money in the bank account. Wait, what do you want? Do you want someone who's going to stay at home and cook and clean for your son, who also needs to feed himself, so it's a two-way thing? Or do you want someone who's career-driven, who's worked so hard to get to where they've got to, only to give it up because you want someone in the kitchen all the time? Because Islam doesn't say that. You know, so it's one of those things. But, you know, alhamdulillah, inshallah, you will get there. That's something I can, with my heart on my hand, say you will get there. So we have about 12 minutes on the clock. So for any of the audience who have just tuned in, you've tuned in to Breaking Stereotypes on Ramadan FM. You're with Zainab Zaeem. I was just about to say my other part of the surname there. You're with Zainab Zaeem. My guest today is Sabina Tayyub, who is a quantity surveyor. And the title of today's show is Breaking Through Bricks and Mortar. And I don't know if you noticed earlier, I said pave the way. So I'm coming out with quite a few causal links there. Yeah. And I'm laughing at my own jokes here. But in order to be you know, when you're in that environment and you're out on the site. I mean, I know you've been working from home recently. But when you were out on site and stuff, when it comes to namaz time or anything, if you are able to answer this, how did you find, let's say if you were being on the job and then you had to pop out to go pray namaz and stuff, how did you find that? Was there any accommodation there for that?
Yes, believe it or not, sites do have prayer rooms, especially big projects. They accommodate for everyone. There's a multi-faith room. There's also like ablution room. There's also like a multi-faith toilet where you can wash yourself with the bassinet.
Yeah.
So there are stuff like that. But smaller projects, you just got to ask, can I have a room like just for 5 minutes to pray? Because I was living out, so there was like washing facilities already there. I've never found it a problem, and I always carry a scarf with me. Even at uni, I used to always carry a scarf with me. I used to pray a lot back then. Been a big thing. I need to really get into. But yeah, you can find facilities. It's not like people are going to be not supportive about it.
MashaAllah.
Yeah.
Alhamdulillah. Well, you know what? Everyone to their own faiths, isn't it? The reason why I am touching upon this is because one of the biggest stereotypes I come across is, oh, it's a male-dominated industry. Oh, where's a woman going to pray? Modesty. We can't really pray namaz in front of men. We can't do wuzu in front of men. So there are all of these little, snippets of concerns, and they are genuine concerns, absolutely. And these are not things that are going to be out on the internet. It's not going to be publicly, available. Hence why I'm asking these questions, because I know you're not going to be the first one who's gone into civil engineering. And the reason why I say that is you mentioned a lot of international students, and I actually had a little smile there. My kid's father, they're very educated, their whole family, teachers and doctors and what have yous and whatnots, alhamdulillah. But they really encourage, well, when I say they, I found that India, most of the families there as narrow-minded or as traditional mindset most of them have, which is very similar to a lot of people here. They do encourage the girls to go into engineering, because I've had quite a few relatives from past and present who've all done engineering and have gone on to continue and then work for some of the biggest construction companies in India, like Tata and all of them. So it is something there that's quite the norm. A bit like females riding mopeds and scooties and things like that, whereas in England, Muslim women don't tend to get on a motorbike. There's been a few, but in Leicester so far, I'm the only one. I really, really keep reaching out. I can't stress enough, if there's others, please come forward. But it's one of those where in England, I've not really come across a female quantity surveyor, and that's why I really wanted you on the show, because as a lawyer I instruct a lot of surveyors, right? And they're all men. But not only are they all men, they're all non-Asians. Probably only had one in a 6-year career span that's been Asian, but they're all men. So it's really nice to see a female Muslim. Now, you mentioned that you had a lot of support from your family, you had a lot of support from friends and so on. You did touch upon a little bit of the community. You mentioned that there was a lot of discussion about you living away from home, working away from home. What about society in general? Did your parents ever receive any backlash from, because, parents, they go out and about and people talk. Did they ever feel anything like that you felt affected them or backlashed onto you at all?
No, I think what they use is marriage as a backlash. Oh, because you sent her away, that's why she's not married. Because you made her independent, that's why she's not married. It's like marriage is like a goal for them. That you're successful if you're married, and then you can do whatever you like. But I don't understand why we're not given that option to choose how you want to.
I think nowadays the mindset is changing, but that is the traditional mindset, and that does stem from Islam, because Islam says that when we are of age, then it's a good idea for us to get married, so that we have a mahram with us. There's only so much that a father can do, so much that a brother can do. So that does stem from Islam, but actually Islam does give women, one of the very first universities ever in the world was a Muslim female, in the Middle East. And Islam does say that a woman could go all the way to the ends of the world, could go all the way to Chin. Chin in the Quran is translated as China. So a girl could go all the way to China for education purposes. And we only have to look at Khadija, radiallahu ta'ala anha, she was 45 and a businesswoman, a divorcee at that, and she ran a business, and Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam worked for her. So, I'm sure he worked for her, but either way she was in business. But there are so many hadiths and examples in Islam that we can look to. Unfortunately, it's the cherry picking element, isn't it? And this is where we come back down to the norm, and I put that for my listeners, I'm doing that in speech marks. The norm that's set out, it's set out by culture, it's set out by society, but that's not actually...
No. And that's where I want to add on that there has been a group developed in last 5 months It's called Muslims in Construction, and there's a big movement in that. And I'm one of the trustee members, and the only female trustee member.
Oh, okay.
So we are really pushing for it to go, and we're having workshop Wednesdays, and it's all that, bringing that awareness. We are Muslims, we're in construction, let's build a unity, let's help each other out. Other people are failing to get promoted because, it can happen that, you're getting a bit of ethnic, discrimination or along those lines, and people that have been successful, they can guide you where to go about. So I'm actively a member of this group, and we've got probably 300-400 members by now across the whole of United Kingdom. We have a few from Dubai, Saudi Arabia. They also, advertise, come and work here, have this and that. So we have formed a community, and it's ever growing. And I'm so proud and, glad that I'm part of this community where I can share my experience and help the women. So I found a lot of women quantity surveyors, Muslims, found a lot of engineers that are Muslims where before I never knew any of them.
Yeah. See, that's one of the
big
things.
network.
It's awareness, isn't it? It's raising awareness. And you can only find out these things if you're part of something bigger, ultimately part of something bigger. But, construction, you mentioned as part of maths in it, of course, calculations, measurements. And one of our algorithms was created by a Muslim, and I don't know if many people know that, but our computers, our tablets, our phones, everything that's run on algorithm maths was created by a Muslim person. Unfortunately, his name escapes me. I'll say, I really don't want to say the name because it really does escape me. But as a practicing Muslim, one of the first maths numbers that actually came is from our kalma. There is no one but God. Right?
Yeah.
And I can't take the credit for that. I'm sure other people have probably noticed that, but it was my father who actually mentioned that to me a while ago. And he goes, one of the first numerical numbers we probably had was in our kalma. There is no one but God. God being the only one. And unfortunately, it's just one of those where Muslims are either left behind because of the hostile environment that we live in, or because Muslims, they themselves leave themselves behind because they are scared to come forward because of all the issues we're going to face. And this is something that I face, I would say, depends upon what I'm doing in my curriculum activities throughout the week, but almost on a daily, be it either myself or be it through my mentees and graduates and students who I work closely with, or colleagues. In the legal field, a lot has changed over the last 10, 15 years. But one of the biggest issues we do have is the disparity between the male and the female partners, and then the Asians and non-Asian partners in a law firm or senior members of the team. But as lawyers, some of us are really outspoken, and when we do outspeak and we have that volume and we raise our voices and we get the attention, things are changing. And nowadays, equality and diversity is a very hot topic.
Oh, yeah.
So now is the time to jump on that topic and get our voices heard. So alhamdulillah, it's really good that what you're doing, and I'm really pleased. So if there are any listeners or audience, viewers who are a little bit worried as to whether you could go into construction or how to speak, I have here with me Sabina Tayyub, a quantity surveyor with a degree in civil engineering, who apparently topped all of her lessons and whatnots to get that degree, who's working in a male-dominated environment, and she's working for one of the biggest companies in UK, Balfour Beatty, and that in itself must be such a proud achievement. Well done.
Yeah,
well done. I mean, I've always worked for smaller law firms. Whenever I come across an Asian, be it Muslim, non-Muslim, doesn't matter to me. But when they talk to me about them working in what's known as a Magic Circle law firm or a Silver Circle law firm, one of the biggest law firms, that's based in London and so on, it makes my heart proud. I don't ever think to myself, why not me? Because I know where my limits are, I know what my levels are. I'm not academically bright, but I'm very, very good when I do practical stuff, and that's where all my experience comes from. And to work in those kind of law firms, you've got to have your A stars and, stuff like that, and you've got to be Oxford, Cambridge kind of, students. But one of the other things I've found is, unfortunately, people aren't happy for others.
Yeah.
And you're going to find a lot of that, but it seems like you've overcome all of those. We've got about 1 minute 24. Very quickly, do you have any tips for any of our listeners, our viewers, the audience, to help them overcome any fears or the lack of confidence they may have?
Yeah, I'll just say follow your heart. I think every decision I've made so far, and that's why I never regret anything. I've done everything with my whole 100% in my heart. And where my heart is set in, I've succeeded only because of that. Nobody has ever forced me. And I always tell this, the secret to my success and how well I've done is simply because I did what I loved. Nobody forced me. And, sometimes we look at the money aspect and all that. I'm like, if you're going to be really good at a job, everyone will want you.
Yeah.
Like when I was at university, believe it or not, I had 8 graduate job offers. And I had Balfour Beatty come to my university to offer me the job.
Wow, mashallah.
They said, forget finishing the assessment center. We want you right now.
Fantastic, mashallah. Congratulations. So you've heard it here. The money aspect, and that's something that we always say, the money aspect will follow you if you're good at what you do. Live within the means of Islam and the land of the law of the land that you live in. As long as you're doing everything within those boundaries, your parents are happy, you've got their du'as. Inshallah, success will follow, but do what you love and do not fear. You're not the only one, basically. And do reach out to Sabina if you wish. Do reach out to me, and good luck in whatever